Hey everybody, welcome to Hash It Out. I am your host, RJ Balde. In this episode, I'll be talking to Vincent Ning about providing much needed tech and logistics solutions for cannabis brands. We'll also talk about our personal experiences with representation in the cannabis industry and more. Without further ado, let's hash it out. What's up, y'all? My guest today is the founder and CEO of the cannabis software and logistics company, Nabis. Welcome to the show, Vincent Ning. Did I say the name of the company right? I know we just went over this.
That's correct. Yeah, it's called
Cool.
Nabis.
Right on, man. Hey, how are you today?
Good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for having, accepted the invitation to come on, man. I'm stoked to have you on here. Where are you joining us virtually from today?
This is just my apartment. I live in San Francisco, so I spend most of my time up here in the Bay Area, but then I actually spend a decent amount of time down in LA as well, since we have multi-located offices for our distribution centers.
For sure, man. Yeah, that's down in I'm in North Orange County. So
oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah, man. So how has that? I imagine like you, under normal circumstances, probably do a lot of traveling, at least between San Francisco and the LA area.
Yeah.
Has any of that been affected over the course of the past almost a year now?
Yeah, I mean, I used to travel down to LA pretty much every month, just to visit the team there and visit some clients down there. Nowadays, I probably go once every 2 or 3 months, trying to limit the number of times I fly back and forth. I've actually resorted to like driving sometimes here and there. I'm mostly on calls all day anyway, so it's kind of nice just to be able to kick it in the car and take the road all the way down.
Yeah, no doubt. How long? That's like a 6-hour drive at least?
Yeah. I first started doing it actually like when COVID hit, and I always thought going to LA was great, but I was sort of like confined to wherever I landed and could Uber to. And then I think it was really around like when the whole Uber Lyft debacle happened and like the regulation almost like, ruled them out from operating. I realized I really needed a car every time I went down to LA. So, so driving down, that way I have my car when I'm there.
No doubt. Right on, man. Well, I'm glad that you, are still keeping busy in spite of all this and, still getting out there and hopefully staying safe out there, man.
Yeah.
How has it personally been for you? I know, like asking the simple question of how are you doing, it carries a lot more weight than it usually does.
Yeah.
So how has it been, personally for you this year, man?
Pretty good. I mean, this year, if you're including like 2020,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, things despite, the face level, the pandemic, the civil unrest and everything that went on in the White House, all things considered, I'm still alive and well. And I think like you're mentioning, I definitely don't take it as much for granted anymore these days than before. So yeah, pretty happy with everything that's going on. Business is growing. I think, our team is hiring. And so, can't really complain. Yeah.
Cool. Right on, man. And you know what? We are actually recording this. This is going to come out after this day, but we're recording this on Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
The inauguration just happened just a few hours ago. So as of this recording, we officially have a new presidential administration in the U.S. So I wanted to ask you, along with that and, the status of the MORE Act to seek to federally legalize cannabis. And there was news of now President Biden, he selected a supporter of legalization to head the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. So what are your thoughts and hopes for the status of federal cannabis legalization in the U.S., whether it be this year or hopefully in the next 4 years at least?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone can really say for certain. But, as it currently stands, I think all signals are pointing in the right direction. And, we're closer than we ever have been before in history, since the war on drugs. So, all sort of like legislative branches, executive branches are all, more favorable than they were before, at least in recent history. So, I think for us, we whenever we execute and we make, strategic plans on like a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, on a 5-year basis, we keep those things in mind, as far as like where the direction of the industry is going, how to structure our business model. Oftentimes it's really hard to plan around those sorts of things. But I think we generally try to assume that those will happen, fundamentally. You can't really plan for all sorts of terminal states of the future. So,
Right.
these are all the best, likely outcomes that we can predict. And so, I don't think we'd be working in the cannabis industry if we didn't believe that it was one day going to be legal in our lifetimes. So, with that
Sure.
being said, I think kind of our actions speak for themselves in a lot of ways.
Sure. Yeah. You are right. Definitely that there's no way to possibly plan for every possible outcome, because if you would have told me in 2019 what was going to happen the next year,
Yeah.
I probably would have laughed you off the stage. Hopefully. Yeah, I would have hoped that that would have not happened, but
Right.
here we are. So, yeah, man. So tell me about your company now. I understand that your company, Nabis, you provide software and
Hmm.
logistics solutions for cannabis brands here in the state of California.
Yeah.
Tell me about when and how you yourself and your partner June Lee,
Yep.
is that his name? Cool.
Hmm.
Tell me about how you started the company, when you started the company, and why you felt like this is an important service to offer cannabis brands.
Yeah. For us personally speaking, we I guess since graduating college, we ended up coming out to the West Coast. We grew up together as childhood best friends over in DC,
Oh,
and
cool.
then split up for college. So I went to University of Virginia. My co-founder went to Harvard. Both went into sort of computer science degrees, Silicon Valley, worked as engineers, big tech companies. And so our sort of like professional skill set has always been software development, and in particular, actually on the B2B side of things. And so, building scalable enterprise tools and distributed systems was, our bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think both of us always wanted to start a business together. Both of us had this entrepreneurial side, always had side projects going on. After I left my stint at Microsoft, I started another startup, not in cannabis. It was like a enterprise developer tool,
Mm-hmm.
software product. Ended up,
Was
that's what
that
brought,
called Scaphold?
yeah, Scaffold.
Scap. Okay, yeah. Cool,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Right
And
on.
so, that's what brought me down to the Bay Area. We got funding from some top tier investors down here, and then ended up after about like a year and a half selling it to Amazon. So now it's actually an Amazon Web Service tool that's listed. So that was pretty cool for
Yeah.
me to experience sort of like the full life cycle of a company from start to finish. And see the product continue to carry on its legacy at a mighty company like Amazon. And so I think around then I was probably like 22 or 23. Definitely still had this like bug or itch to continue this entrepreneurial side of me and path. And from there I thought I wanted to continue exploring not just how to use my personal skill sets in software development, but also how can I marry that with just personal passions as well. Even if it wasn't the biggest idea at first. I just wanted to start small, work on something I really liked and enjoyed doing every day I woke up. And so,
Mm-hmm.
at the time it was like mid 2017. Cannabis had just recreationally legalized in California. Licenses were
Yeah.
about to be granted, and so it was like a pretty exciting time. And I think there was a lot to look forward to then. So I got together with June and we just started shipping products for a friend of ours. It was kind of a fortuitous relationship that we had through like a second degree connection, but he owned this pre-roll company that distributed across products across California to a bunch of ease depots. And so, for us,
Oh,
like
yeah.
we just wanted to like, you learn more about the industry, the supply chain as it currently stood back then. And just work with people, his suppliers and vendors that he worked with. And so that was kind of our shoe in to get into the industry. Didn't really think that distribution was like the end all be all solution, but
Mm-hmm.
just happened to be that as we were delivering products, we weren't really doing it for profit. It was mostly just for building up the relationships and the network in the industry. But we just kept getting like people kept referring more and more brands to us, thinking that every single week we drive up and down the state in our own vehicles, and people were like, oh, why don't you just, since you're going up there anyways, I'll just drop off some more product with you, and if you could deliver it there too. And we were like, sure, yeah. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us to build our network. So we kept doing it. And when 2018 rolled around, the new licenses came out, and for us to continue even doing that, we had to get a distribution license. And so we sort of like looked down the list of, the six, I believe, 5 or 6 different major license types. Distribution was the one that allowed us to persist as far as like deliveries go. We got a distribution, applied for it, got the license. And from that point on, like there was just so many like brands and suppliers that really wanted help with shipping their products. Cause, on the cusp of this legalization, a lot of great talent and smart people were getting into the industry who wanted to like build a cannabis brand. And contrary to a lot of, other verticals such as like, beauty or fashion or, other CPG products or food distribution, you can start a brand and there's like existing infrastructure and platforms to help you launch your brand. And you can build, true like direct to consumer e-commerce brands without having to own any of that infrastructure. And so for us in this industry, it was just so nascent. Everyone was still self-distributing their products. Imagine if you wanted to, start a popcorn brand and you had to buy your own trucks and warehouses and distribute them from California and Los Angeles all the way to Maine on the East Coast. Right. It would take us so long to scale. And so people just really needed a service like ours, and kept using, basically it was just through word of mouth. We didn't really even have a marketing team. We still really don't have a marketing team today. It's all just through word of mouth. And people see our platform as this really scalable logistics solution that can get their products across the state of California. We're the cheapest service in the industry. And the software layer really is like what sort of combines all of it and offers this unified experience for the customer so that they can basically have the look and feel of their own distribution platform without having to own any of that infrastructure.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right on. Man, so that's such a cool story how like your company literally started with the most organic process like possible. Like you literally sort of just like planted a seed and like it just snowballed into what it is now. Yeah. And you mentioned that it was really through word of mouth that really, brought you to where you are now and facilitated your growth. Yeah. Do you think that the and you can speak to this because you've been in other industries before. Does the cannabis industry differentiate itself from others in that there is still that foundation of word of mouth? Of course, that foundation is everywhere. Yeah. But maybe less so in more established and larger industries. Yeah. Whereas the cannabis industry is backed by this known like community of people, right? Absolutely. Exchanging ideas and really helping each other along the way in, like you said, this nation industry. So how does the cannabis industry differentiate itself from the other industries that you've worked in? Yeah. I think maybe it'd be best to start off by talking about how it's similar, and then I can give you sort of differentiators. Yeah. I mean, I think cannabis is at the end of the day, it's a plant. It's a physical good that needs a supply chain, and I think in a lot of senses can exhibit similar qualities and traits of other supply chains for food or alcohol or pharmaceuticals. I think one thing that makes it really different is the thing you mentioned is around the community. And I think the interesting part is I think it's the community is brought together for sort of like 2 reasons. As we see it today, is one is just that the fact that it was I think the medicinal properties of the plant, like it has its own natural community of like consumers, so that brings a lot of people together, and I think sort of the gray area of the industry right now makes people closer because they feel like they need to, in order to do business with one another, you need to really trust the partners you work with. So we put a lot of dedicated time and effort into building a lot of trust, building high quality of service, making people feel comfortable handing off their
millions of dollars worth of products with us to ship across the state. I think the second thing is actually more systemic, where cannabis as an industry is a very highly regulated industry. And so because of that, you can't just, have someone learn how to, contrary to, for instance, like the software industry, software is known for having very low startup costs. You can have anyone learn how to write a couple of lines of scripts or code and be able to build a website and, start selling things online. In cannabis, you need a license, you need all the proper legal measures and check boxes checked off. There's a lot of restrictions for who you can even work with. And so from that respect, it sort of creates this fence around the industry, and it makes it this closed loop ecosystem where, once you meet one person, they introduce you to all the other people that you can work with, and then it kind of fans out from there. And I think that creates that, because it's like a closed loop ecosystem, it creates that sort of community as well that becomes very tight knit over time.
For sure. Now, and you mentioned that you are originally from the DC area, so you're originally from the opposite coast. I'm originally from Michigan, so
cool.
We're both sort of on that side of the country. We're both we've grown up in the snow every now and again.
Totally.
I'm sure if you're like me, you may not miss it as much as as you might thought you would have.
Yeah.
Because I certainly don't, although I love my home state. I'd love to get back there as much as I possibly can. Tell me about how your personal sort of introduction or entry into the cannabis industry. What was it like coming up in DC to then coming to California, specifically Northern California, where there has been that foundation of cannabis growing up in that area in Northern California. What was that like for you, making that journey from the East Coast to the West Coast, and what made you eventually choose to get into the cannabis industry? And did you at all ever experience a backlash or judgment from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, coming from the East Coast, I guess I've always just wanted to be on the West Coast. It's kind of like you at least one part of your life want to try it out. So it wasn't specifically for cannabis related reasons. For me, I think growing up, it was just like, you hear pop songs and like celebrities talk about how great LA is, or San Francisco, and, California in general. So, that's kind of what the allure came from to come out here. And I think that at the time that was kind of, conjoined with like my sort of aspirations in the tech world. So that's kind of what brought me out here, and that kind of married professional and personal there, passions wise. And then how I transitioned from sort of like the tech space into cannabis was really just, just seeing how nascent the industry was, how much there needs to be still built left in this industry. For someone who's, my age right now is like 27, I really wanted to be part of this greater movement, this cultural movement of our generation. And I felt very privileged and fortunate to be standing in this situation where, cannabis was legalizing in my lifetime. And in addition to that, I think, as it compares to like perhaps even like the agriculture industry, where you could potentially consider cannabis as a plant. There's already like large players in that industry, like Monsanto, for instance. In cannabis, there's just no incumbents, and there's no sort of like predefined standards or notions. And so, coming into this space, you really got to experience this like Wild West and be able to invent and define this structure that never existed before. So I think the backlash didn't really come from like the industry, because there was no sort of like predefined notions. People were very open to new technology, new tools. They frankly just needed it. And I think the backlash mostly came culturally. As an Asian American, I think my parents were definitely. I kind of kept it from them for a while. I kind of beat around the bush whenever they asked me what I was doing with my time these days or those days. And I kind of just said I was working on this software logistics startup, and they actually told me, they said, they kept questioning me. I mean, I think they kind of knew in the back of their head, but they were like, isn't that already like a solved problem? And I was like, yeah, but it's different. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Bye. Yeah. So that kind of went on for a few months, and then I think what sort of brought all of it together for me was really just there was like an article that came out on Forbes that really just like announced sort of this like we were kind of like a sore thumb in the industry, you know, like people were not very like tech forward in the industry at that time. And so, you know, for us as like software engineers, you know, who were making a great salary, having a cushy job, coming into the cannabis space, it was just an interesting story. And so like Forbes made this article about it. It got to my parents without me telling them about it. And so they confronted me about it before I, you know, so they heard about it they heard about what I did through the news before they heard about it from me directly.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I was kind of freaking out that day, but then it turns out ironically that, they were really supportive. I mean, I think my parents these days just want me to be safe. You know, just with any sort of like entrepreneurial experience, like your parents just want you to be like happy and fulfilled and like make sure you're not, you know, starving on the streets, because there is a fine line between entrepreneurship and unemployment. And so from there we I just kind of I assuage their concerns, just continue to work hard at this business and continue to grow it. And I think over time these days they're super supportive, and my parents actually invested in the business. And so I think that speaks a lot to how much the stigma has really changed in the industry as well. Where like, you know, before you'd never expect like a, you know, 50, almost 60-year-old Asian woman to like really be supportive of cannabis, let alone utter those words. And she's nowadays putting her money where her mouth is. So really excited to see that change in you know, public perception.
Man, yeah, man, I can totally relate to you. I had definitely a similar experience coming up in Michigan. And, you know, I came up in a part of Michigan which was very rural. We're talking like 3,000 people. The population hasn't changed since 95. Yeah. It was like me and a few other Filipinos just like kind of having each other's backs out there. Not to say that it was a bad experience, because I loved where I grew up. Yeah. It was just we were the only brown people around. Yeah. And it was very, a more conservative leaning place in a lot of ways. And so that was just, the mentality of that area. Yeah. And then, of course, being an Asian American, I had that similar experience where it was just, and my Google Home is talking to me, where it was just, my parents just wanted to make sure that I was safe. Like you said, they wanted to make sure that I wasn't starving in the street. It was the whole story of, we immigrated to this country so that you wouldn't have to starve in the street. You know what I mean? Exactly. Yeah. And then my dumbass was like, I'm going to be an actor. And they were like, and I would hear the same thing. It was a similar thing that you said about entrepreneurship is there's a fine line between being an actor and being unemployed. Right. And my acting teacher, the first thing she said to me was 95% of working actors are unemployed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, awesome. And my parents were there for that presentation. And I could feel them both like kind of look at me, and they were like, RJ? And I was like, you sure about this? I know. Yep. And then you can imagine their reaction to after I moved out here, and I was, acting and performing and finding these media outlets. Yeah. That eventually I was like, hey, my acting has now brought me into making cannabis media. And, that was just they were like, wow, like you said, if they were preparing for any possible outcome, this was the one they weren't preparing exactly. For. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, man, I completely relate to you in terms of that experience. That's now, crazy. So and so it raises the question that I now have for you. What does it feel like then to sort of be a catalyst for changing the perception of cannabis in your family, for those around you, coming from where you came from and the experience that you had? What was it like to sort of see the mind of your mom in particular change over time? Because I had that experience too, seeing that change. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was, I think the reason why I enjoyed spending my time, doing these talks and really expressing my opinion about where the industry is going is because I want the perception to change ultimately. And
I think the more and more, we get into a room together and like, talk about all the great benefits of it, I think over time, new generations and like old perceptions start to change. I think being a champion of that in my own community, I don't take the approach generally of like shoving it down people's throats.
Sure.
I think for me, it's mostly, I've always operated based upon meritocracy, and just, leading by example and by action. And so, I wanted this company to be really successful, and as that to be living proof of why this industry will exist for now and forever. And I think, through that, I think to see my parents, turn around and accepting this is, brings me a lot of fulfillment, because I feel like my methods worked there in making that happen. And I think, it's oftentimes if you try to shove something down people's throats, they kind of reject it more. And so I think for me, I just tried to, put my head down and work really hard at this until that sort of changed. So that's kind of like been my approach to it, as far as like my community and like my personal relationships. And, people who I think, might have a different perception of the industry. But I mean, over time, you start seeing that change pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The work certainly speaks for itself. And that was the same thing with me. It was like when, when my loved ones saw that, we were actually doing work, you know what I mean? We were actually working, you know? And it's just it's a new thing. We've been conditioned all these years, especially in this country, to denounce cannabis in every way. And, it's the reefer madness and all of that. So, a cultural ship is a very large frigate to turn. Yeah. It takes a whole hell of a lot to get those sales to turn. So so I completely relate to that idea of meritocracy and letting the work show for itself. Yeah. And just really putting your head down and focusing on the work that you have ahead of you.
Absolutely.
I think after anything, that speaks the most.
Yeah. I mean, I think, apart from like money and, those like material things, I think it's like the mission sort of starts resounding a little better over time. There's like certain like truths to it too, our company employs over 100 people. That's like beneficial to the industry or to the society. And so, those sorts of things, mentorship, allowing people to develop and grow, building up talent. I have a lot of friends who, used to work on Wall Street, and now they're all investing in cannabis or have joined cannabis companies. And so, I think those sorts of things by the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to ask you about this because, speaking about being in the cannabis industry, seeing the change of such a young industry over time, the topic of representation in the cannabis industry has been a growing talking point throughout the years. Personally, for me, when I see cannabis media, or whenever I even see the schedule for guests that are coming on this show, as grateful as I am for all of them, I don't often see people in the space that look like me at all, really. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on representation in the industry and how it can be better.
Yeah. I mean, I think for like, Asians and people from our general heritage, I think they're there, like you jump into a room and then you find someone who kind of looks like you, and it's definitely there. It's just not as pronounced, I would say. People aren't as forthcoming about it. They're not the first people to like step in front of the room and say like, hey, I work in cannabis. And, I definitely felt that way myself as well. And in a lot of ways I still do. And I have to kind of work against my own like intuition and inhibitions to be able to do that. I think, I mean, the more and more I work in this industry, I find more and more Asian people. And there's a whole like subsect of this larger cannabis community that is like the Asian cannabis community, which I think is like really powerful too. And it, brings like our people closer together as well. And I think, that stuff's really critical because of the fact that, Asians and the historical culture has been predisposed to not, to be opposed to cannabis. And so,
Right.
if you personally want to do it, you need that community to help support you in that action.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to eventually just, dip out of the industry because you just feel like it's too much cultural pressure. And so, the more people that jump in, the more, people like us who are outspoken about it, I think the better ultimately.
Totally, man. Yeah, I had that exact same experience where, I was so curious to want to jump into to this community and to this industry, at least, however ancillary I may be, but there was that cultural pressure, you know what I mean? Where I was like, am I dishonoring my ancestors by doing this?
Am I doing something wrong? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like there was like a level of guilt, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it was what I love doing, and it was in line with my passions and my interests and my skill set.
Yeah.
That it felt natural, but then at the same time it felt unnatural because of just the conditioning and cultural pressure out there.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, man, I just it's nice to get to share that experience with someone. And like you said, that like group of Asian American cannabis people, in the industry, is so important. Not only to build each other up and to have each other's backs, but to make sure that other people like us who are in that same kind of curious position, have a resource.
Totally.
If and when they do make that decision.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think, in a way, I think because our company is run by like two minorities, we try to cater a lot of our services towards small businesses, because we know that like a lot of the bigger businesses are run by, Wall Street folks with a lot of money. And like, we don't want this industry to be run by, corporates like that. And so, I think in order for the smaller businesses, the smaller brands, more boutique ones, the minority owned ones, the, female owned ones, for them to succeed, they need support. They can't have just like another, distributor who basically doesn't work with small businesses because they just don't have access to market. So one of our like core values and mission is to really just provide that access to the market for anyone and any type of business, and give everyone a fair shot at getting to market. And so, we started with like the logistics side. That's like kind of like bare metal, like picks and shovels. Like we give people the tools to get their products out there. And then, lately we launched a couple of new services. One being a service called Nabis Capital that basically offers like short-term financing and lending solutions for small businesses, because banking is a major problem. Bigger brands, bigger businesses can get banking, and a lot of, as long as they're follow all the KYC and diligence, but small businesses just don't have that type of opportunity. And on top of that, we offer like this, e-commerce, like online marketplace as well for free for brands. So like they can list their products. Because a lot of people, who jump into this industry don't know anyone. And it's hard to get a contact who's like a buyer at like a decent, retail store. And so, for us, we ship now, over $250 million worth of product a year to pretty much every dispensary in the state. And so we want to be able to, bring together all of our network and offer it to our customers and our brands, no matter who they are. And I think that's something that, really speaks to like our clients as, something that we offer apart from just like, trucking and warehousing and offering a really fast delivery service at a cheap cost. Those are all just like economical benefits. I think the other on top of that is really just, the network that you get when you come to Nabis. It's that kind of has a whole nother, it's an intangible that, is pretty priceless.
Yeah, certainly it is. It is an intangible for sure, to be a shepherd of community, if you will.
Yeah.
If you allow me to gas you up a little bit, a shepherd of community is it's a very important role, and it is an intangible, but it is essential.
Yeah.
Definitely, especially in the space in which we both find ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So Nabis has been in operation for about 3 years now, right?
Yep. 3 years.
2017 was about when you started, yeah?
Right. Yep.
And most recently, Nabis was named let me make sure I get this right, a Y Combinator top company for 2021. What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess Y Combinator is probably more known to people in like the tech space, but it's I would say it's like the Harvard of startup incubators. It's like the number one most recognized startup incubator program or fund, if you will. So they've developed companies. They were like the first investors in like DoorDash that just IPO'd, also run by Asians.
Right.
Airbnb.
Hey.
Yep, Airbnb.
My favorite delivery service too. I didn't even know they were run by Asians, but it's my favorite delivery service. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Airbnb, Dropbox, and so like to be even invested in by them was a huge honor, and I think spoke a lot to the industry and how mainstream it's become. On top of that, they come out with this list every year of like top companies in their entire portfolio. Amongst that entire portfolio are the greats that I just mentioned earlier, and it really meant a lot to us to see our name listed there. I think again it speaks a lot to the industry as well to demonstrate how big this market is and like how much opportunity there really is that you can build a big enough business here. That was really cool. I don't know if it means that much to people outside of tech, but within tech, it's definitely a huge accomplishment.
Totally. Well, something that would mean something to anyone, whether you're in tech or not, is on top of Nabis being named, the Y Combinator top company for 2021, you and June were also named in Forbes 30 under 30 for enterprise technology for 2021. So that's pretty dope. The accolades just don't stop. What was that like?
Yeah, no, that was pretty cool too. That came sort of like as a surprise because they don't really tell you if you get named or not. You kind of just like drop it in an application, get some of your mentors or people you respect to like give you a nomination and submit those, and then they don't really tell you the day that list drops or like if you've made it until that list actually drops. For us, just woke up one morning, had a bunch of texts, and emails and LinkedIn messages, and it was just it was a really cool sight to see. I think in the same way as like the YC top companies list, that one definitely spoke to a broader audience, like you're mentioning, but also speaks to the industry as well, that they're like such a reputable publication such as Forbes would out of all the entrepreneurs in the world dedicate one of their 30 spots in enterprise technology to a cannabis business. I think it's those spots are pretty rare, and so to give it to someone in cannabis, I think demonstrates how progressive their publication is, and they really wanted to shine a spotlight on this industry. So really happy to see that happen. I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, these are all just accolades, but these are all just accolades. I think these are nice little boosts of energy throughout the journey. But I think the work is far from over.
Yeah. Oh, totally. But always nice to be recognized for good work, man. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
To you and June. Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you.
Now, 2021 for y'all is obviously already off to a pretty rad start. So what are you looking forward to for the course of this year at Nabis?
Yeah, I mean, this year, I think it's going to be exciting for us in the industry as a whole. Just through our brands, through our community, we're starting to feel that like energy and excitement build back up. I think last year was kind of like, someone sunk a dagger into like our balloon. And then basically it was just everyone regrouping a little bit. And I think the companies that came out of last year are definitely stronger than they were before. And I think it really shook out and weeded out the bad guys or rather like the bad operators, and then really solidified and strengthened the folks with resolve. And so I think coming into this year, you have a lot more, good operators, good talent in the industry. I think there's going to be a lot more capital coming into this industry as well as investors start turning towards cannabis and seeing all the favorable tailwinds of legalization across the U.S., sweeping across the U.S. And then I think there's a lot more people that are going to want to start brands. And I think it's going to be a year where, everyone's going to be experimenting with new lines of products and new product categories. I think ultimately all that is to say is the consumer is just going to have such a wide selection of choice and cool, new, interesting products. So yeah, I can't wait to see what comes out. Frankly speaking, we're just sort of this backbone infrastructural piece. The real creatives out there are the brands, dreaming up all these innovative new ideas. And so, we just want to be here to help support the industry when it's here.
That's rad, man.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. I'm stoked for you. Now, where can our viewers and our listeners find out more about everything that's going on at Nabis and keep up with you?
Yeah. You can email me directly if you want, vince@nabis.com. And if you want to find more about our services, you can go to www.nabis.com, Nabis. Or you can follow us on Instagram. It's @GetNabis. And those would probably be the best places to find us.
Right on, man. Hey,
Yeah.
Vincent, thanks so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciated it. It was awesome to get to connect with you, man. And I hope you continue to stay safe up there in NorCal. And hopefully, once everything is cleared up, maybe we could meet up in person for a Hash It Out round 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, RJ.
No worries, man. Stick around just afterwards. I'm going to say thank you to you off camera. But
okay.
Stay safe out there, man. Be well, and we'll catch you later.
Awesome. See ya.
My thanks again to Vincent Ning for joining me. If you are a member of the cannabis community and have a story you want to share with us, we would love to hear from you. You can reach the show at hashitout@TRICHOMES.com. You can help others find the show by taking a moment to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. You can also join the discussion with industry insiders and get your voice heard by joining the community at TRICHOMES.com and following us on all social media. Hash It Out is produced by David Fortin and presented by TRICHOMES.com. I am your host, RJ Balde. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and clicking that bell, and I'll catch you next time.